Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Kingdom Recon. I'm sure you've missed us just as much as we have missed you, and we are excited today to get into some draft talk. I am one of your usual co-hosts, Arrowhead Tom, or just Tom. That's fine too. I've been called worse either way. Uh, Here on my right is one of my partners in crime, Mr. Randy Ellenberger at the Chief of the North. Randy, how are you doing tonight?
Doing awesome, man. It feels good to get back to it. Been on a little bit of delay with some health issues, bouncing around back and forth, scheduling and whatnot. But it's good to be back. I miss that smiling face of yours, Tom.
Yeah. I figured you were spending some of that time off probably watching the Spencer Rattler highlight tapes,
See,
with your extra time.
it's too early for that shit, Tom.
Too early. Yeah, no. So, as Randy mentioned, we've had a litany of things happen, curveballs thrown our way. That's life sometimes. But um, down below, you will notice a new face to the podcast, but not a new face to us. Not somebody who we are unfamiliar with talking draft stuff with. Down below is Avery. His Twitter, yeah, we're still calling it Twitter. Twitter handle is impeccable graphics, GRPXS. If that sounds confusing, just watch us on YouTube and you can look it up. It's on the screen here. But make sure to give him a follow. He is one of our favorite people to talk draft with. We're super excited to get him in today. But Avery, how are you doing, man? Thanks for joining us. And
Man,
how's it going?
going great. Glad to be here. Thanks for the invite. Really excited to talk about this draft and talk about some possibilities and some things that likely won't happen, but we can hope, right?
Yeah, I mean that is. It's like
Wishful thinking and putting some of that good juju out in the universe, man.
That's it.
Yeah, that's what we need. We get our hopes up just to get disappointed. Right before we hit record, we were talking about some moments in the draft, in the past where we went, wait a minute, we really want this guy. George Pickens was mentioned, and we all bonded over a mutual disappointment that Jonathan Taylor isn't a Chief. So
got a little elevated, a little escalated there for a little bit. Yep.
Yeah, we were a little escalated. We had actually wait for Randy's blood pressure to come back down before we started the show. We didn't want to get hit with an explicit tag within the first 30 seconds. So
he tried with the Rattler stuff already, though. He's trying.
Yeah. Avery, just in case you're unaware, I've told Randy that if the Chiefs draft Spencer Rattler to back up Patrick Mahomes at any point, I will personally buy Randy. He will be the first person in Chiefs Kingdom to own a Spencer Rattler Kansas City Chiefs jersey. So I will have it ordered as soon as they're finished, reading his name off the card. So
they just love to poke the bear, man. They just love to poke the bear.
So all right, well, let's get into it. So what we're doing today is a little bit of a kind of some mind exercise, kind of a way of looking at the different depth and different positions in the class, and kind of comparing some guys that might go on day 1, day 2, day 3. Obviously, when you're talking about talent evaluation, your day 1 guys, your first round guys are going to have the edge over some of your day 2 guys, some of your day 3 guys. For various reasons, right? You get into day 2, you get into day 3. It's not necessarily always that the better players are, but like that day 2 and 3 selection, sometimes you just have more questions about them, right? And that's how we end up. We're going, oh, how did this guy fall to day 3? Well, maybe he only played 1 season. Maybe maybe he had injury issues. Maybe he had off the field stuff. But we're kind of looking at how do we kind of separate them into tiers? How do we separate them into, the value of, especially with a team like Kansas City that's picking at the end of the first round, right? You're going to be into that kind of that second round talent pool anyways. Is it worth waiting to grab a guy, or really similar to what they did last year where they took a guy at 32 and then they jumped back up to get another guy who's probably a little bit higher in their ranking? So obviously the big position in Kansas City that everybody wants to talk about is wide receiver. So we're going to start there. Let's just say, for the record, we know the big 3 aren't going to be there. They're not even going to be, anywhere close. So no need to talk about Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, or Roma Dunze, unless one of them gets caught hanging out with Chiefsaholic sometime in the next couple of weeks, Robin Banks. So we'll just take them off the board. So the kind of that next tier of guys, however you have them stacked. Let's start with Brian Thomas Jr. I don't know. For me personally, he's easily wide receiver 4. I have him kind of in that tier by himself right after those big 3. Like he's kind of nipping the heels of them. Avery might disagree with me. What do you think, Avery?
It's sorry. I'm used to it. I'm about the only person I know that doesn't have him as wide receiver 4. I've actually got him as wide receiver 6.
Okay.
Ton of potential, in my opinion. Obviously, I think he has the talent that if you get all that out of him, he could possibly be the best receiver come out of this draft.
Yes.
But I don't know if that happens. So for me, he's at 6 right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like the boom and the bust with him is huge. I love the boom though. Like, holy cow! We're not. I don't know what it is about that prospect, about him as a prospect that just. Anyways, Randy saved me here. What do you?
We could just let Tom Rich run on and on and on about Brian Thomas. We've been big fans of Brian Thomas all season long, and about halfway through the season, we started to realize he's pretty special. Towards the end of the season, we realized he's really special, and in the hopes of us being able to draft a guy like Brian where we are. Those hopes were quickly dwindled and squashed and smothered. So without us making a significant move up, I honestly don't see Brian Thomas getting out of the top 15, top 18. I don't think we're going to use that much capital to move up for a guy like that. That as much as we do love the boom aspect and the talent and the 6'3", 4.33 touchdown machine. I honestly don't see any way that we make a move to go up and get him. So he kind of scratches him off my list. Completely, which sucks because, halfway through the season, we were really thinking he could be a legit target for us where we're at, but without moving up, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. So that brings me to my question, right? So if you can't have Brian Thomas Jr., in terms of what he offers as a player, who's the next guy, that comes to mind that you think could offer something that's similar? I'm not saying who's the next best receiver on the list, but if you're trying to say, okay, I want the day 2 version of Brian Thomas Jr., who comes to mind? Because I've got one that pops into my mind that, but I think Randy, I used this in the group chat earlier, so you might steal it from me.
Yeah, I'm not going to steal it. I'm just going to say, if we're not going to have a shot at Brian Thomas, one guy that we do legit have a shot at is AD Mitchell. He is my next. He's my next guy up. They're both incredibly similar in size, weight, speed. I think AD Mitchell is a little bit more physical. I think Thomas is a little bit more of a finesse type player. I really like the aspect and the thought of having a dude like Mitchell land. Does he get to 32? I honestly don't know, but I think he's probably got the best shot of that next tier in that mold to get to us at 32. But if we're going through, say we don't, Thomas is gone, Mitchell's gone, we pass on a wide out at 32, and we in that second round. I'm not going to steal your guy, but I'm going to go for a guy which we'd probably have to make a move up in the second round to get. And I've been on this dude all season, and you guys all know that I love Malachi Corley. That guy is a beast. Get the ball in his hands and watch the fun happen. The only, the knock is consistently it's Western Kentucky. It's a small school. It's not the upper echelon of talent that he's going against. I'm like, and they're like, oh, he's the next Sky Moore. I'm like, don't you ever put Malachi Corley and Sky Moore in the same sentence ever again. I will never talk to you.
Randy will find you.
Malachi Corley is a completely different animal and beast. At 5'11", 215, the dude is chiseled, cut up. He's a running back that plays wide out, like I said, get the ball in his hands in space and watch the fun stuff happen. So he's my guy in the second round. If we can't get a, AD Mitchell at 32, and there's some other prospects we can maybe look at. I know, and I'm not gonna touch on Tom's guy. We talked a little bit earlier about that, but Malachi Corley is my second round go-to.
So this is one of the perfect examples of like the value in the player. I'm gonna. So Randy, you mentioned your guy. So this is the name of the game is this or that. So would you rather have Xavier Worthy at 32 or Malachi Corley at 64?
Corley all day.
Okay.
Corley all day.
And I know very different types of players in terms of speed profile and all that stuff, but some of the things that you're asking to do in terms of screens and all that stuff, like I think that's the vision that people have for Worthy in the offense. But we've been talking, Avery. I know you've got thoughts on AD Mitchell. You were somebody who put us on him early. But let me ask you this. How do you compare Brian Thomas and AD Mitchell? Like, what are their similarities? How do they stack up to you in your mind?
I think for me, it's very similar to what Randy said. AD's a little bit more polished at this point. And you got to remember, Thomas hasn't been playing the game that long, from what I'm understanding. So there's definitely room for him to grow. But the other thing for me with AD is just simple. When it's the big time moment, that's who you saw Texas go to. You got another number one over there, and it's always coming to number 5. Obviously, Thomas didn't necessarily have that same situation because he's dealing with a great on the other side of him. So that's one of the things that separates the two for me. That said, I don't think either is going to be there by the time we get to 32. Just the size and speed is too good to pass up for some of these teams. And like Randy, with us getting Hollywood, I don't see us investing overly into the wide receiver to move up and lose some of that draft capital. I think a guy that you could get probably in that third round is Jalen McMillan. Here's a guy that's used to going over the top, used to playing off of 2 other receivers that are similar to the profiles that we have, and that we're going to have. So I think he could be a guy that we could look at later in the draft and still get some of that same value at with lower costs.
Yeah. So, I mean, man, talk about the group of pass catchers that Washington had. For the fact that Jalen McMillan is the third guy on that list, for most people at 6'1" with, 10-inch hands, the dude's got baseball mitts for hands, and he ran a 4.47. It's not like, it's wild. So
Patrick's got a stable of dudes there, man.
Yeah. So for me, Brian Thomas, and AD Mitchell, I agree with what you guys said. I think Mitchell's a little more polished. I think there's, I think Mitchell's got a better floor, but I think, but with Brian Thomas, it's that ceiling. I also think Brian Thomas is more of they both have a vertical presence to their game. Brian Thomas is more that he's going to catch the ball and bust a play open versus Mitchell's going to find those spots in the zones on the corners and all that stuff. I feel like he just has a better nuance to that right now. But when I thought about that vertical pressure that Brian Thomas puts on, I'm going to just throw a name out there because he had a rough off season in terms of the process, Senior Bowl, all that stuff. But I still believe, and I'll remind everybody, Rashee Rice this time last year, people were saying some of the same things. But if you want a vertical field stretcher on the outside, who's got some size to him, Tez Walker out of North Carolina, I'll die on this hill. He'll probably go undrafted because I love him so much. But and then we're gonna be canceled. But again, if you're looking for that vertical stretch, although I like the Jalen McMillan ad too. He's one of those guys that I really need to remember more. I've watched him. I've watched a lot of that Washington offense. And he pops, and it's almost like they just spun the wheel every week to see who was going to be, who was going to dominate that week. But so I mean, I'm a big Tez Walker guy. I feel like everybody else has cooled off on him. So last year around this time, I was when I started the process last year, I was a big Rashee Rice guy. People cooled off on it. I kind of got afraid. I was like, all right, never mind. I don't want to be the not cool kid. Like, and so I'm standing on it. Maybe I don't know squat about wide receivers. I think Devontae Walker is going to be a good receiver. I think who's the kid in Green Bay?
Jalen Reed,
not Watson. The other one, the other rookie from last year.
Reed was a rookie last year. Dubs was the year before.
Oh nope.
It's Reed and
other guy
from Virginia.
Yes, the West Virginia kid. Oh, here we go.
From Virginia.
Let's see. Wicks, Dontavian Wicks.
Dontavian Wicks. Yeah.
Yes, I think Wicks is a little bit taller, but kind of that same those same vibes. Like he's gonna be raw, but he's got such an athletic profile. Just get the ball over to him. We'll make it happen. So, all right. So those are a lot of the common names. I want to do one more name that's frequently there around 32 that I think for me, this is pretty solidly my wide receiver. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. He's my fifth guy. Wait, hold on, I can't count. He's my sixth guy. And kind of the last guy on my list, I would go, yeah, I could live with that at 32. Like I would take him, and that's Keon Coleman out of Florida State. So just to clarify, we got the big three. We got Brian Thomas, we got Adonai Mitchell, and then we got Coleman. Those are the guys that I'm like, first round, I would take them at 32. Is there anybody else, just for the sake of the exercise, that you guys would take at 32, wide receiver wise, that you would like be excited to take at 32?
That I'd be excited to take at 32.
That changed it, right?
The excited, right? That put it in there because the other guys that you obviously think about now are Troy Franklin, and Xavier Worthy. Those names get thrown around at the end of the first round. For some odd reason, and Lad McConkey. That's probably the third one that gets thrown around. And for some odd reason, neither one of those three guys moves the needle for me. I can't figure out why. Just as there's nothing. I mean, Xavier Worthy's got the speed. He's also 163 pounds. Okay, Lad McConkey. Everyone says he's an amazing route runner. He's polished. He does all these things. The more I watch him, like he runs okay routes. Somebody threw a clip out there for me to watch the other day. It was a 10-yard deep out, and I'm like, dude, he rounded the whole thing off. He didn't really stem inside. He didn't create a whole lot of space, and he made it. And it wasn't a great ball or a great catch like that. If you're putting that, if that's your clip that you want to try to sell Lad McConkey on, you're doing a terrible job because that was about as basic as a deep out as there is. And for some odd reason, Franklin doesn't do much for me at all.
Yeah.
Just doesn't.
I've never been a Troy Franklin guy, and then he didn't do great at the combine, which again, not it's not like he had the worst combine ever, but just compared to everybody else, right? Like he felt like he blended in and was just another guy, you know. Mm-hmm. So what do you think, Avery?
The thing with those three is, for me, when it comes to Troy Franklin, I don't see any type of plan. What's the plan of development? What's the use that's going to be in our offense for him? Because if it's just that deep over the top, you get that later, or you can get it in free agency. When it comes to Lad, I can at least, say, okay, we're just looking for a possession guy, somebody that's dependable, that's going to catch the ball. We know he'll do that. Mm-hmm. When it comes to Worthy, we're getting a just in case, similar to what we did with McCole when we didn't know what was going to happen with Tyreek and his off the field situation. So we just want to have a backup plan just in case. But in this case, it'll be just in case we don't re-sign him at the end of the year. We've got that speed element on standby. But with Franklin, I don't see any of that possibility. But I'm with Randy. With none of the three, Lad I'd be okay with. I wouldn't be upset. The other two, I'd probably be like, because it just waited.
I would hate Lad's pick less than the other three, but I'm not.
Exactly. It would be the worst of the evils.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So I feel very similarly to what you guys like. Lad, I could live with. Lad feels like a pick that I'm like, damn it, Brett Veach, really? Like, but it's like, okay, I can't complain about it, but also I want to complain about it. And that's where I get into, again, part of this exercise. It's like What do you think? So let me ask you this, Avery: Lad at 32, or
I'll
have you
give you
or who?
all day long. I would take Jermaine Burton.
Okay,
Day
Jermaine Burton.
two, late day two, early
Okay.
day three, wherever that falls. Like if you
Mhm.
go back, and it's crazy, we were talking about the weapons that Penix had. You go back and look at 21 when Burton was still at Georgia. It's him, it's Ladd, it's Pickens, it's Browers.
Mhm.
That's a loaded up thing, and he was right, and AD Mitchell, all on the same roster, and
Yeah.
he's right there with all of them. One game short of playing as many games as the rest, but the yardage he has more. He has one less touchdown than all of them. And to
Mhm.
me, when you look at what happened with this year in Alabama, he was the offense in a lot of.
Yeah.
People say Milrow, but he actually made Jalen in a lot of those games and a lot of those moments. And when he had dependable quarterback play the year before with Bryce Young, he was just as good as anybody out there, in my opinion. The biggest concern with him is the same thing you had with George Pickens. Is this guy mature enough to handle the moment? And that's about it.
Yeah.
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 Burton's guy that like a lot of people that I respect like a lot more than I do, and so I'm just like I'm super open to that. And I also see
Yeah.
that Alabama offense took a step
Burton's
back.
in definitely. He was on my list, but he was in what we called our bargain bin. Our pick 95 or later type guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
Two names that I want to poke out there for second round guys. Say we don't get a shot at AD Mitchell, or
Mhm.
say we go tackle, or we trade back, or we do something stupid. Two more guys in the second round that I
Mhm.
would absolutely love to have. One, Xavier Leggett. I think if Leggett does anything last year, even if he has 30, 40 catches instead of the 6 or 12 or the non-existent catches he had last year,
Mhm.
at 6'1", 221, he runs a 4.39, 1,200 yards, 70 catches, 7 touchdowns. If he had any shred of a season the prior year, we're talking in a for sure first round dude. And then I'm also going to go back to that Michael Penix stable of wide receivers with Jalen Polk.
Mhm.
Another dude that I would love an opportunity. I think he's got a legit shot at maybe still being around at 64. I don't think Leggett will be. I think Leggett's an early second guy.
Mhm.
Polk could maybe hang around at 64. But those are two more names that I wanted to throw out as distinct possibilities that we could get at 64, or maybe not have to move up as far as we would need to for, say, like a Malachi Corley.
Yeah. See, that's what like this whole exercise again. There's pockets, and I think we've heard Brett Veach talk about that before. There's pockets in the draft of players. So like, that first group, sure, whether you cut it off at Ladd or Keon, like, you know, those are your kind of that first wave. And then it's like if you miss out on Troy, even if you miss out on like Ladd or Troy, letting some of those other guys go. But then you hit a pocket with like Roman Wilson, Ricky Pearsall, Jalen Polk, Malachi Corley, Devontae Walker, Jermaine Burton, Jalen McMillan, all kind of in that range of like day two. And you're like, dude, I can live with those, right?
Oh,
I could live with some of those. So that takes some of the pressure off. So
That's
let's talk
third round grouping of wide receivers. It just shows how incredibly deep this thing is. I mean, you named off a whole bunch of dudes and a few other guys that are in that list still. Brendan Rice, Luke McCaffrey. Another guy I really, really like is Javon Baker.
You damn it, Randy.
What I do now?
I was just about to transition to Javon Baker. Would you?
Okay, we'll transition. I just introduced
when we get to that day three,
you can run with it.
No, it happens every episode. You steal at least one of my guys. Right before,
great minds think alike, Tom.
Exactly. So what are you doing thinking like mine? Anyways, so obviously we're deep on day two. You named a lot of guys that I think are going to be around day three. That's those are rounds 4 through 7. Javon Baker is a big one. He may end up being a day two guy just because he's getting so much traction, and
I think he'll be a third rounder at latest.
Yeah, I think so too. I was hoping people would shut the hell up about him and we could enjoy him, but
The only reason
turns out he's good at what he does, and people will find him.
The 4.54 is probably the only reason he's going to be sticking around as long as he does.
Yeah, but man, he's so much fun to watch.
Yeah.
Who are some other guys? So I know you mentioned Luke McCaffrey. I know our guy Josh, who's on the mend right now. Shout out to him. He has got a lot of thoughts about the youngest McCaffrey brother. Right. But yeah, what do you guys think? What are some other guys in that day 3 range that might be some value, shots to take?
Fire away, Avery. I'll let you go, man.
I think we done named just about all of them, but there is a name out there that would definitely be a project, and you would have to figure out how you really gonna use them. And if anybody could, it's Andy, and that's Johnny Wilson.
Yeah, he's right there. Yep.
I've watched this kid develop year after year at Florida State, and it's better and better each year. He's a lot better athlete than he probably gets credit for. It's just the big word is consistency. If he can be consistent in the moment, we wouldn't even be able to have a shot at him if he was consistent enough.
Right. Honest. I mean, yeah, Johnny Wilson said 6'6", 230. He ran a solid 4.5.
Yeah.
That's a big, physical, fast, athletic guy. But you're right. The key word is consistency, and I'm going to throw drive and maturity in there as well. I think those are probably the 3 things that the dude seriously has to take a look in the mirror and say, I have the physical tools and the attributes to do all these things. The rest of it is right up in here, and I need to take a look in the mirror, grow up a little bit, and get my shit straight. And the dude's going to be uber productive. But yeah, Johnny Wilson, I was kind of leaving him out there. I was wondering if somebody was going to pick up on him too. And there's another dude that I think, because of how stacked this wide receiver class is, he just doesn't get talked about, and his stature, I think, has a little bit of something to do with that too. But if I'm not mistaken, he did lead the NCAA in receiving yards this year, and that's Malik Washington out of Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
I got another one of Tom's guys. I mean, the only reason he's 5'8", 160, or he's 5'8", he's 190, so he's a little bit thicker at 5'8", which is awesome. He ran a 4.4, but the dude had 110 catches, 1,400 yards, and 9 touchdowns on the season. But a guy like that's not getting talked about at all in the second, third round, even whispers, just shows how stacked this wide receiver draft is. And just another reason to say, like, if we don't get one of those guys in the first round, maybe we miss one of the top 5 second round guys, there are legit dudes that can come in and play in the third round, and maybe even a little bit later with just a tad bit of development. I mean, we're going to need a better wide receiver coach. We're not going to get into that right now. But that's a whole different caveat. That's going to raise my blood pressure again. We're not going to do that. But he's in that say 3rd or 4th tier of guys that, dude, he's really freaking good.
Yeah, I love the fact that you stole my. Again, I've got his profile pulled up on my screen right now. 4.47 time was a little. I mean, when you're that small, you want him to haul. You want to see that kind of offset a little bit, but his 10-yard split is a 1.53, which is good. 42.5-inch vertical, pretty. So we know he can get up and get it. Here's what you're talking about, being that compact build. 19 reps on the bench press, pretty dang good for. I mean,
got a lot of Zay to his game. A lot of Zay Flowers in his game.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I love that comp because he's very, and it may be a situation like Zay Flowers where it takes him a little bit to kind of adjust to the NFL, but he is just so much fun with the ball in his hand. And Virginia fed him the ball, so there's plenty of examples to watch him and watch how he approaches the game. But I also think that he was probably one of my favorite players to watch when things were kind of off script. Which I don't know what script Virginia was running most of the time, but Yeah. Yep. And so he was like, yeah, if that's your day 3 guy and you're adding him into that rotation, I will happily take him over some of the other guys that are in that receiver room. So, all right. Well, that's, receivers are the sexy pick, the sexy conversation piece right now. Let's jump over to the offensive line real quick, because that's a bigger need. We tweeted out this week, this really is a conversation that Chiefs Kingdom should be having more of. And I think this one's a little bit more interesting because I think the offensive line class is really talented, but it's very top heavy.
Super top heavy.
Yeah. So it's like,
and then there's potential everywhere. Everyone's got potential.
Everyone's got potential. So, you guys tell me if you disagree, right? So these are guys that if they were on the board at 32, we're running the card in, no questions asked. All right. Joe Alt.
Oh.
Any impressions? All right. Any hesitations about Joe Alt?
I would knock little kids and old ladies down. I don't care.
We're gonna clip that out later.
Right.
Let's go into the vault. I know he's cooled off a lot, but if he's there at 32, you punch that ticket, right? Talise Fuaga out of Oregon State, same thing.
Yes.
You punch the ticket, whether you want him to play guard. Troy Fatanu out of Washington, wherever you're playing him, inside, outside, you punch that ticket. All right, so those are the 4 guys. The other one on here, J.C. Latham. Talent perspective. All right,
super punching.
All right, super punching.
I think right there is the cutoff of the first tier of these guys are legit first round.
Avery, are we missing someone? Who are we missing?
I don't know I don't think he's gonna like it, but Graham's in that first round.
Okay.
Here's the reason.
Listen,
Graham can play tackle for you in a pinch. If you need no different than Tooney. He can play tackle for you in a pinch. And with Tooney coming off of this injury, plus getting older, and we're not gonna be able to pay him a second time like this, you would have that replacement already in place. Plus, if something would ever, knock on wood, happen to Creed, he can slide there too. So all that positional versatility makes it where it's okay to go ahead and take that reach for me at 32.
Yeah.
I'll put that small caveat. That was my top 5 tackles, just tackles. Graham is definitely a first one because as versatile as he is, he literally play all 5 positions, and I would feel okay about it. I do think ideally he is set for an all-pro career as a guard center, but he does have the ability to play tackle. So at 32, I'm not hating that pick at all.
So you're not taking Mims at 32 if he's there? Just curious.
So that was the one I was going to bring up.
Okay. I put Mims. And this is okay. I love this because this is where our conversation started today. We started talking about O-line, and as a former O-line coach, I love talking about these dudes. I love working with these guys. They are the lifeblood of your offensive football team. Nothing happens without them. So I love these dudes. The problems that I have with 2 of these guys that keep getting thrown in the first round names, Mims and Guyton. I see the measurables. I see Mims at 6'8", 340 pounds. I see Guyton at 6'8", 322 pounds. They're athletic. They're physical specimens. I believe they have the tools. What they don't have is the experience and the full-fledged amount of tape and the opportunity that they actually played, say, 2 full seasons of football, multiple starts. I mean, Mims was hurt. Guyton has started 14 games in 2 seasons at tackle. He's never been a full-time starter. He's never made it through an entire season. That's my problem. Mims was hurt, came back and played in the playoffs. He played well when he's healthy. I see it, but there's not enough experience and ability to stay on the football field and show me that you're going to lock down that tackle spot for 7 to 10 years, whatever it is, to spend a first-round grade on you. This is where we're talking those guys with potential and prospects. And when you put potential and prospect next to a guy, that immediately bumps him to a 2nd and 3rd round pick. He is not a first-rounder in my mind.
So I would say this, like with Mims, for me, it's not necessarily potential because, like you said, when he's had the opportunity, he's been out there, he showed dominance. For me, he's more just straight medical. If the medicals can clear, I know I got a ball player.
Right.
Guyton, I feel, is just like you said. That's strictly, I'm hoping this grows into something because
And
I
Hope
see it.
isn't a first round pick. Hope is
And I agree. Hope, it's not even a second for me. But
Yeah.
Thank
so
you.
I'm going to have some more foundations. Now, here's kind of how I stack it. I have Mims kind of similar to the wide receivers. Like there's almost a parallel, like Mims and Brian Thomas Jr. Like they're in that little, like that tier right on the cusp of like at the heels. Same thing. And yes, like you talk about, like for Mims, yes, it's a small sample size, but also elite measurements and athletic profile. When he did start, he played well. There's going to be bumps and bruises with him, but I think if you're talking about, you put those two guys, I agree with you. Like, and I still like Tyler Guyton, right? As a guy who sometime on day 2 is probably going to be good value because you could take him. But honestly, if you put Tyler Guyton in a room right now with Wanya Morris, like I'm not sure, like, that's a pretty, they're both those guys are kind of like that, and they're coming from the same school.
And Wanya was a third rounder.
Yeah. Yeah. Guyton, I think, makes sense. Big dude, long arms. I see why people go, yeah, this guy could be something else. But I also think that Oklahoma's a big enough program. They're well coached enough that some of those things could have been cleaned up by now. So, I mean, again, that's where you're talking about potential versus hope. Like Avery said, Mims is much more medical. And I think if you look at that and go, hypothetically, let's say he played out the rest of this season, right, and didn't have that ankle injury, I think we're talking about him as a top 10, top 15 pick, no questions asked, right? So it's a super. And the other part is he's at Georgia, which just happens to be churning out first or second round, third round picks in the NFL draft at offensive tackle every 2 minutes. So that. It wasn't like he couldn't get on the field because he wasn't good enough. There was just too many good people, and he was doing his part. He played, he played around, what other positions he needed to, and so yeah, I have Mims a little bit, separated from me. So, I think I would probably be pretty excited about Mims just as, like, again, if they have the confidence to take him because of the medical. So then we get into that next tier of guys. And this is where I'm like, okay, we're probably a little top heavy here. Tyler Guyton, Jordan Morgan, Kingsley Suamataia, Patrick Paul, Kieran Omega.
What a disgusting name. Patrick
Kieran A. Kieran A. Yale.
I like Avery.
Yeah.
Kieran Omega.
I'm with you. That's Yale, right?
Yeah. So the kid from Yale.
The kid from Yale. There you go. Yeah.
So when you look at that group of guys, who would you be like? Where's the value there? Are those guys that you could reach for at 32, or you want to wait for 62? And there's one other. Well, there's another guy I'll throw there that's not on that list, but I think those are the kind of the consensus next group of tackles.
I think the thing about that pick is with the run that we're gonna get on tackles, because I'm on record as saying we're gonna break the record for most tackles taken in the first round. You're gonna run a risk of, if I'm trying to wait to 64, it's not gonna be there. I'm gonna have to move up at that point. But for me, there's only a few of those that I would actually reluctantly select at 32. And that would be Jordan Morgan, because the technique is super sound. The only thing that keeps him from being a pure Chiefs selection is his arm length. So you slide him in if it don't work out there on the outside, and he's going to be an all-pro for you at some point. And then Kingsley. That for me, those two would be the only ones I would take the risk on.
Thank you.
Well,
I've been on the Kingsley train for a minute.
Yeah, and admittedly, we've had this conversation a few times, Tom. Like, Kingsley is just one of those guys I need to sit down and watch more. What I have seen, I do like, but it's not that I've seen enough to make a full-fledged, like, solid evaluation.
Mhm.
I've watched a lot of BYU football. I'll be honest about that.
Super wrong.
But
Well, why not?
yeah, it's not high on my priority list right now, I guess. But yeah, I'm 100% with Avery. Jordan Morgan, we jumped on Jordan Morgan halfway through the season as he's just bulldogging people down in Arizona, and the fact that he was coming off an ACL from the year before too, so he may not even be 100%. I mean, if he was doing what he did last year, I'd say 90, 95%. Absolutely. You add an inch and a half to that dude's arms, and he's a surefire first round pick, and that's not a question. I still am one of those guys, you watch the Underwear Olympics, you do the measurements. Oh, his arm's 33 and a half and blah, blah. I was like, watch the freaking tape and watch him just put dudes in the dirt. He has what we talk about a lot about, Tom, is that tenacity. He's got that dog in him. And that's what I love about Jordan Morgan. I don't care about his short-ish arms. I would not be pissed. I would actually be happy at 32 with Jordan Morgan. I'm slowly getting on the Kingsley train as well, but I need to watch some more of him. I mean, you look at the dude, he's 6'5", 330 pounds, and he moves well. I just need to watch him some more, but I'm sure the more I would get into him, the more I would be happy with that pick. But I'm with Avery. Those are the only two dudes out of that list that I would take 32.
And I agree with you. I think those are the two that you can roll the dice on. I will say this, and when you go back and watch Kingsley a little bit more, remember this: 21 years old. He'll be 21 years old on draft day, and he plays like that. But like again, that's where we talk about potential. I'm talking about projection, and you see it and you go, yeah, he's 6'5", 326, but it's a good 326. So then we get into some of the other names in this tackle class. And like we said, this is a premium position. There's going to be a run on them. Who are some other guys, whether it's day 2 or day 3, we'll kind of bundle this together. Because I look at this list after that group and I go, there's 1 or 2 names that I would feel good about on day 2. And after that, I'm like, I don't really even know some of these guys. There's 1 or 2that I look at and go, okay, I'm, Julian Pearl from Illinois, I know a little bit about because, that's my home state and I used to live in Champaign. And, Javon Foster, Missouri, you get clips of him, whatever. But who are some other, is there anybody else there's one guy that's big on my list, but I think Avery's going to steal him. But you guys, who
probably
else,
not.
Who else is day 2?
Because I'll be honest, after you get past that second group, for me, it's a big drop off as far as what you can get in the short term. Everything is after that is going to be 2-3 years down the road at best. And for me, at that point, I'm willing to take a flyer on some of the smaller school guys. Some of those, I can't think of his name, from North. I think it's one from North Dakota State this year. I'm willing to.
Garrett Greenfield from South Dakota State.
South Dakota State, yeah. That's when I'm in that space. Let me go there. I know the product because I've seen the product.
Right.
Even though it's small school, they develop. So let me get that. Let me get it in rotation, and we'll build to where we need to get to. But, you mentioned Julian Pearl. I was big on Julian coming into the season because he has an athletic profile. But it kind of fell off this year.
Yeah.
To me, there's not a big difference between him and Paul from Houston. They're both pretty big kids that can be good athletes, but you never see that translate in the game.
Right. And that's one of the big. I mean, I know people were banging the Patrick Paul drum early in the season because he looks the part. 6'8", 330 pounds. Like, dude looks legit. Until you see an inconsistent motor, an absolute slop and complete lack of drive or even give a shit in the run game. And I know I've been talking to some guys like, I don't care about my offensive tackle in the run game. Okay, try running an outside zone or stretching and him not sealing or kicking a dude out and not doing his job. Okay?
Yeah.
dude needs to be able to run blocks. So don't give me the shit that you don't care if you're tackled run blocks or not.
Yeah,
Get out of
at
here.
least need to be able to seal off the backside.
Exactly.
You can't do
So,
that.
Patrick Paul is non-existent in my world. He fell off so fast, it's ridiculous. Some of these third-round guys that I still really like, I'm a Blake Fisher and a Javon Foster guy. I think those are solid third-round dudes. But then I'm with Avery. You get a little bit past that with, say, Matt Gonclaves from Pitt, maybe. I'm a big Garrett Greenfield fan. You know, I'm a North Dakota State guy. So toot the horn for a South Dakota State guy. You know, there's some respect right there. Garrett Greenfield and McCormick, the guard for SDSU, are two legit dogs that you're going to be able to get day 3 more than likely that will come in and play football and kick some ass for you. Yeah, I mean, you get to that point past that, it's hard to really find legitimate guys that you're like, all right, I could see him, you know, coming in and making a difference, because at that point, 3rd, 4th round, your project 2nd, 3rd year dudes that you're hoping develop into something. And you get a lot of those smaller school tackles that are going to bump in and play guard for you really well, like Cordell Volson from SU, who was an All-American tackle, and now he's a pretty goddamn good guard for the Bengals. And you know, same with Cody Malk down in Tampa, All-American tackle at NDSU. He's a dog at guard for Tampa. So
I'll tell you what we might left off. Roger Rosengarten.
I knew it.
I got the bingo call.
Yeah, Rosengarten in the 3rd round would be an absolute steal.
Yeah. I think that's a guy that, like, you're going to draft him. He might play a little bit as a rookie, and then he's going to be a right tackle in the league for like.
Right. And the thing is, he can play left tackle too, because he started at left, and then they moved him to right when Penix came in to protect his backside.
Exactly.
He's good.
I'm still here. Yep.
Rosengarten, I mean, he's a little bit on the light side at 308 and 6'5", but I think he moves well, and he's one of those lunch pail dudes that he'll come in and he'll do the job. He might not necessarily be an all-pro or a Pro Bowler. There's a possibility there, but he's going to be a solid
Fish vibes. That's what he would do for me. He'd give Eric Fisher vibes. Not saying he's number 1 overall pick, but I also didn't think Fisher was either. But
also worth mentioning, Rosengarten's 21 years old, so another young kid, probably has some frame to fill out, some muscle to put on. But again, the guy you draft on day 2, and you get I think you get a second contract out of him as a starter, right? And that's pretty good for a day 2 pick. So I know we are running down on time. Let's pick one position on defense we want to cover. So I will give you boys the choice. We can go defensive line, or we can go cornerback. So since we just recently lost one.
Right. If I had to pick, I would still go D-line, because I think that's the more – I think there are a couple at the end of round 1 that could be in play that would be really nice, and a couple of dudes that would be there at 64 that would be fantastic.
Okay. Avery, you're the guest, so your opinion.
I'm good either way, because I got them on both sides.
Okay. So, do we want to do interior?
We got about 12, 15 minutes. We can maybe pound out 2 of these. We could do that.
Yeah, okay. So, here, let's do this. Each of you, we'll start with the edge position, right? Give me your favorite first round guy, your favorite day 2 guy, your favorite day 3 guy. We'll do it that way. I'm going to go first, since I'm putting you guys on the spot.
Yeah, go ahead.
In a perfect world, day 1, if we're talking edge for Kansas City, I know that's tough because they've gone edge several times. I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to say Darius Robinson, because I think he's going to be more of an inside-outside guy. I think he offers something similar to what Charles Omenihu does in terms of the versatility. He's a lot of projection. He's a lot of potential. Unless Jared Verse slides, and he shouldn't, but for some reason people seem to be thinking to seem less on him. Whatever. Robinson's probably my day 1 guy. My day 2 guy, and I'm also doing this so Randy doesn't steal any of these. and this is one that I'm like in love with, and that I've just warmed up to a ton. Marshawn Nealand out of Western Michigan. I haven't forgiven him for giving this guy more, but holy cow, the guy moves like a car crash. And then day 3. Ooh, who do I want to see? I could be mean and take a lot of people here, but Cedric Johnson, Mississippi Ole Miss. I watched a little bit. I want to like him more than I do, but he, as a day 3 guy, you could do worse. It kind of makes me think of Mike Dana a little bit. Like you could squint and see how he could grow into something, but maybe not the. I'm not excited about the day 3 guys, but I've bought you guys time. Who's ready?
I'll jump.
All right.
If it was perfect world, the top edge, in my opinion, and y'all know I'm a Florida State guy, so if I could choose verse, I would say verse, but I won't say verse. Honestly, I think it's Laiatu Latu. I think Latu's the most polished pass rusher in this whole group. He has not only a pass rush plan, he already has his counters planned out. He's relentless. So he would be my edge, top overall.
And we don't know what those medicals look like, so we could see him.
Hey, so I'll say this: I'm one of those that, unless you've missed the majority of your last season, the medical really don't scare me that much. Like when we took Trey Smith, I was already pounding the table. He's gonna be one of the best 5 out there. And we see what happened with the kid from Miami that plays for Miami now. He was at UCLA, Jalen Phillips.
Jalen Phillips.
I mean, this year he got hurt, but before that, straight dog. If we go into day 2, a kid I like is Ellis out of Utah. Kid's got a motor on him. If the team performed a little bit better, probably we'll be hearing a lot more about him. Unfortunately, their team just kind of fell apart there at the end and wasn't very exciting to watch besides that, especially after Rising went down. If we get into day 3, a kid I've liked for a couple of years now who set behind some of the people we're talking about when you talk about a Trice from Washington, set behind Latu, and that's ZTF. ZTF is a baller, in my opinion, when he has the time to be out there on the field and consistently get into the game flow. So he would be a day 3. I wouldn't be so upset about taking if we got him.
Yeah. All right, Randy, what's left?
Exactly. I mean, honestly, don't think there's any shot in hell we go edge in the first round, just because the guys that are worth drafting the first round won't be there. If you're talking about a day 2 guy, Braylon Trice, I would not be disappointed with Braylon Trice at all. 6'4", 245. Would like to maybe see him in that 265-ish range, just to hold up against the run a little bit better. But I think he'd be a fantastic day 2. A day 2 guy. Jonah Ellis. You mentioned him from Utah. A kid that I've had my eye on for a little bit for a day 2 type edge guy. I still think I'm not 100% sure we go edge that early either. A guy that I like that might slip into that late day 2, day 3. Braden McGregor, a lunch pail guy from Michigan who does a little bit of everything inside outside. He's got a motor. He's a kid that does whatever you ask him. He does it to the best of his ability, and he's not going to stop until you literally drag him off a football field. So, as for edge guys, that's kind of where I kind of stop the list. I think the interior defensive line is more of where we're gonna probably look to fill some more bodies.
Hopefully.
So you sit there and you look at the end of the first round, interior defensive line guys that would be available. For some odd reason, Jerson Newton has slipped a little bit in that world.
He hasn't really done. Yeah, I don't think so. This is one that I think the media forgets about, but NFL will remember,
Right.
just because he hasn't done a lot in the combine. So let's say this. I'm going to say, for the sake of time, Byron Murphy, Jazon Newton off the board at 32. Probably not taking a defensive tackle at that point at 32, unless they really love Avery's guy, Braden Fisk. Avery would take Fisk. Avery would take Fisk.
I would take Jenkins and Braden Fisk at 32. Absolutely. And the one thing that pops off to me watching Braden Fisk, we started talking about him early because Avery told us to watch, and we watched and we fell in love. That's the kid that his motor will not stop. I love watching him chase down plays 15, 20 yards downfield.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see defensive tackles doing that kind of thing on the most part. We don't see Chris Jones chasing people down a whole lot, and we love Chris Jones.
Yeah.
Braden Fisk does not stop, and I love that. And if we miss out on a Braden Fisk and we got to wait a little bit longer, and we're sitting there, we're like, all right, day 3 pops around, maybe he's still available. Christian Boyd from Northern Iowa, another one of those kids that's 6'4", 17 pounds, motor, small school. He's going to get the job done too. I mean, he's a lot of fun to watch, and if you haven't watched a lot of them, you really need to. Christian Boyd's a dog.
So this is how much we've talked about Braden Fisk in our group chats and stuff. And Garrett might cut this out of the show later, but this is a true story that happened today. I was texting a female friend of mine today, and I forgot what I was trying to say. It was something a little flirty, and my phone auto corrected to Fisk, and what I had said was I invited her to Fisk or something, and she's like, Fisk ? And I had to explain to her that it's a draft prospect. So we talk about Braden Fisk a lot around here. So I'm going to echo what you said. One other name I'm going to throw, and then we're going to throw it to Avery to take us out on the interior defensive line. Dwayne Carter out of Duke. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to watch him. Kind of more of a compact guy. It looks more compact, but just like he's got like center blocks for hands. That's what it looks like. And it's weird because he didn't have the sack production, but just as a guy who I think has some of the traits that you want, has the power in the interior to play, even though he may not have the prototypical size. I really love watching him play. So that's a guy, probably a day 2 guy, that if we threw him in there with Chris Jones would be, I think, pretty often would be pretty fun to watch. So Avery, who are some other interior defensive line guys you like, or if you just want to talk about Braden Fisk for a while, we'll let you do that because that's really your guy.
No, if it's not Braden, I really don't want one. But no, seriously,
dang, that's true love. That's right.
Yeah, I think there's some guys that's also starting to slide that potentially could fill that naughty role down the road. And you don't hear much about Sweat anymore. You don't hear anything about McKinley from A&M anymore. Those guys are slowly starting to slide further and further back on day 2 for us. That's an option that would be there, that if the perfect receiver or another position isn't there, you would go ahead and just pull the trigger on it. But other than that, I'm not too high on just taking anybody. I think the guys y'all mentioned, Carter especially, stand out to me. You might take a Tyler Davis on a flyer day 3, but that's about it.
Yeah, it's an interesting, like I said, again, very similar to the tackle class or the offensive tackle class. It's pretty top heavy. I think the edge has got a little bit more depth. We're going to pass on talking about corners today because I would say there's a good chance the Chiefs may not even look at those until day 3. But I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. But we want to get you guys out of here under an hour. Avery, thank you again so much for joining us once more.
First official guest.
Yeah, our first official guest. That's not Garrett. So, so again, if you are, for some reason, if you're not following Avery, if you're living under a rock, You really should. I feel like Avery, we've given you shout outs on the show before. I feel like sometimes we just listen for you to tell us who's good, and then we go and just talk about it on here. But if you're not following Avery, make sure you're showing him some love. Again, his handle is at impeccable GRPXS graphics. Again, watch the YouTube video if you can. Just pause it for a minute and get that handle. Give him a follow. Show him some love. As always, I'm Arrowhead Tom. This has been Randy Ellenberger as well. We are here, the Kingdom Recon crew. We'll be back soon with more draft coverage. Thank you guys again for listening. We appreciate all the love, the support. Leave your comments, your questions. Tell us who we forgot. Tell us who we are sleeping on. Make fun of my inability to talk to females. Whatever you need to do, we'd love to hear from you. And again, thanks as always for listening.